Good morning and welcome to the Peregrine Academic Global Services presentation about Leadership Matters. We're glad that you can be with us today. We're going to wait a couple minutes here to let the folks who are coming in just a second here, people right on time. A couple things. Right now you are all on mute. If you have a question or if you have any issues, we have somebody monitoring the chat room and also the question line. We'll get started here in about a minute and a half, and we're glad you could join us today.
All right. I think we can go ahead and get started. Looks like everybody's in now.
Again, good morning and welcome today. My name is Bill Parrott. I'm the Director of Accreditation Services at Peregrine Global Services. We are a multi-option service provider for higher education. We offer assessments in different areas, and we offer leadership modules and other learning aids. Today, we're going to be talking about developing and assessing the leadership competencies within the healthcare administration programs. Some of this stuff you're probably already going to know, but we're going to talk about it too. I would like to introduce to you today one of our newest members to our team, Desiree Moore. And she is the Director of Marketing and Strategic Business Development. Desiree?
Hello, everyone. It is so nice to see you here with us today. As Bill said, we're going to discuss the leadership competency, a very timely discussion given the changes that the healthcare industry is experiencing. And just a little bit of background on me. I worked in higher education for a number of years as an administrator and a faculty member. I did also work in healthcare for a couple of years, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. And then we also have Cassie Rice here, and Cassie Rice will be moderating the webinar, and so answering any questions that she can in the question box, also delivering questions to us towards the end of the webinar, and you will hear from her after the webinar. She'll send you a follow-up email. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so I always like to start with the why, anytime that I can. And so why are we here? Why is this important? Why do we care about developing leaders in the healthcare industry? As with any industry, leadership matters, especially in healthcare. According to the Joint Commission, because healthcare organizations represent a system of processes, people, and other resources that must be led effectively to achieve the desired outcome of high quality, safe patient care. And because of this reason, leadership is particularly important in the healthcare industry. As many of you likely know, 5 out of the 20 fastest growing industries will be healthcare and social assistance related fields in the next decade. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, employment is expected to grow in healthcare 15% from 2019 to 2029. This is 2.4 million new jobs. The growth is largely due to the aging population, which will create a greater demand for services along with longer life expectancies. Over the next several years, healthcare as a whole has put renewed energy into creating a consumer-centric culture. However, this has been a process, and the recent disruption that has upended our traditional methods of delivery and pushed us faster towards creating this consumer-centric culture. Much like we are experiencing in higher education, healthcare is moving very quickly towards adopting technologies that engage patients and allow for personalized delivery of care. Therefore, we must recognize that leaders are made and not born. This is why leadership development is a $366 billion industry, according to Forbes magazine. Our role as educators is to foster the skills and qualities of students to create leaders and ensure our students are prepared for the rapid changes in healthcare. And then another why is change can be difficult. We all know that. But it also provides opportunity. The disruptive nature of the pandemic has presented us with both difficult situations to overcome, but opportunities that have a positive impact into the future. For example, I live in Colorado, and as I stated before, I worked for healthcare in a safety net healthcare provider for a couple years. One of our key challenges was that Medicaid and Medicare did not reimburse at the same rate for telehealth visits, making it difficult to provide care to those members of our very geographically restricted community. It took years of advocacy work, which I thankfully got to be a part of, to pass a law that would increase health access to health, especially in rural areas under Medicaid, and this happened last year. However, the disruption we have all experienced recently has hastened the rate in which states are moving towards reimbursement or have moved towards reimbursement for Medicaid and Medicare. This is just one example of the rapid change that came about as a result of the pandemic. But as mentioned, not all changes are easy or positive. The future leaders in healthcare are in a unique position to move the industry forward through such disruption while minimizing difficulties that come with change and embracing growth and innovation. The healthcare environment can be described as complex and dynamic. Such an environment is best managed by effective leadership. Also, you are all familiar with AUPHA. They are sponsoring our webinar today. AUPHA, the Association of University Programs and Healthcare Administration Curriculum, and teaching criteria value some of the skills that are not necessarily knowledge-based skills, but skills important to leadership and working with a team in the healthcare sector. So cultural competence and diversity, ethics and business, decision-making, and leadership. Now, as I mentioned, all of these skills are personal qualities, we're not usually able to really measure them or identify them easily. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but this is definitely a why of why we should measure leadership competencies right here. And to sum it all up, I found this quote and I just thought it embodied what we just discussed. It's from Joe Ivy Buford. For those of you that do not know, Buford is an American physician and dean of the Robert F. Wagner Graduate School of Public Services at New York University and a clinical professor of pediatrics at the NYU Medical School. And Buford said, "The process of educational design at the professional school level must be some combination of the core knowledge and skills needed in our field, influenced by a timely response to the changes or challenges our graduates will face. This involves knowledge of both the demands of employers and feedback from alumni and students. It is also our responsibility as educators and practitioners to look ahead for developing trends and paradigms for action in the health sector that will allow our students and our own intellectual inquiry to push the envelope further and to proactively shape the field of management and health, not just to respond to it. In a sense, we face a double challenge in teaching health sector management, not just teaching how to, but also what for." And so we know that leadership is important, and we know we want to develop the skills and qualities that make up a great leader within our students, but it can be challenging. And what are those challenges? Well, identifying the skills needed to create great leaders, right? What are those skills? And we often have a tendency to choose leaders based on qualities that are not necessarily indicative of great leadership. What we need to realize is that all people have the potential to be great leaders. Just not every potential leader or current leader has mastered the leadership competencies. Therefore, instead of picking and fostering the most extroverted individual or the person with the best communication skills, we need to fully understand what qualities are required for great leadership. Once those skills and knowledge are identified, we need to foster the natural tendencies that we are all born with. Everyone has the potential to be a leader, and it is our strengths that we must continue to sustain and develop, and our weaknesses that need to be mitigated. Also, another challenge that I'm just going to throw in there is time, right? And so time is our most valuable commodity. And so ensuring that we have solutions to the challenges that we face that don't cost us more of our time, but allow us to change the way we use our time and make it more effective. And so I'm going to take it over to Bill.
Hello, and today the learning objectives we're hoping to cover are some of the basics of understanding leadership in education. You want to identify the traits and skills that are important for leaders in healthcare. Identify those leadership traits in ourselves that help us be able to mentor our learners. And we want to be able to map the progress of the future leaders in healthcare. And we also hopefully identify some resources needed to assess development of leadership. Desiree likes to talk about why first, and I'm always one who likes to talk about some definitions so we can be all speaking on the same page. So there's three words here I want to make sure we understand. The first is knowledge, and knowledge is that demonstration, awareness of understanding of concepts, of theories, principles, of things that we know, to use a part of the word in this. The second one is associated with it as skills, and that's possession of a capability to do something, to physically input data, to physically write a letter, those skills to be able to communicate, or whatever other skills they are. Those two are things that we learn how to do. The third one is competencies, and these competencies refer to these knowledge and skills, but they also integrate other pieces, attitudes that healthcare leaders might need to be effective. The competencies are there to be improved with training and education. They're those things that have to be integrated into a person's being so that they can be successful in whatever field they choose. In leadership, the competencies for leadership can be a little bit complicated, because a competency is the ability to do and understand and act in one way. Leadership competencies are a whole range of abilities, of competencies that have to integrate and work together. It's by using competency-based approach to leadership that we can help better develop the next generations of leaders. Carson Dye and Andrew Garman, some of you who may know their book, Exceptional Leadership, 16 Critical Competencies for Healthcare Executives. It's in the second edition, is what we're working from here. They have identified 4 cornerstone traits that all leaders need to have to be successful, or in one extreme or another. They have to be able to cover it here. First off, they have to know who they are. They have to have a well-cultivated understanding of their strengths, their weaknesses, and their identity, and who they are inside, and where their skills and abilities start and end, and where other people's begin. The second thing is that these traits, that people have to have a real connection with other people, be able to communicate, to have empathy and sympathy, to be able to do those things that connect people and tie people together. The third thing is, you can be a good people person, you can be very aware of yourself, but if you can't articulate a compelling vision for a unit or organization, the other traits don't really matter. And then even if you can speak of a vision, unless you can execute those steps that are required to accomplish the vision, the other things really don't matter. So it's these four things that are critically important that in some way or other, some people have more strengths than others. Some people are able to speak of a vision more carefully. Others are better at executing the plan. Some people are really good with people. Diane Andrews, they broke it down to 16 subtraits. And these subtraits, I'm not going to go through and read them all and talk about it, but they all in some way tie back to one of those four main traits. The leadership competence, but there we go.
Oh.
That's right. Go ahead.
Yes, and so Bill, thank you for speaking to those traits, and they are vital to leadership. And so another way of looking at it is, and these leadership competencies, you may be familiar with the Healthcare Leadership Alliance, and if you are the writers of this particular article, it was called Competencies Leadership. It was in the Journal of Healthcare Management. Identified three areas that the 14 domains listed out by the Healthcare Leadership Alliance were associated with these different areas. And so the first one we're going to talk about is compelling vision. And so compelling vision is one of the essential leadership responsibilities. And it is to relay information effectively to employees, senior management, and the public. And an organization can only accomplish its mission if the right information is transmitted to the employees. Leaders must be able to envision the future and communicate that picture clearly with their team. The next one is energizing goals. Goals provide an organization with a sense of concrete progress towards the vision. Leaders must be able to facilitate the creation of goals that signify each milestone in the journey, making sure that the leader is able to communicate goals and establish those goals for their team, help team members feel that they're actually making progress, which motivates them to keep going. And then organizational climate. Early on in a career, employees are often awarded for individual contributions, right? But as the employees move higher in the ranks, the contributions of that individual are not as noticed as the contributions of their entire team. Because a leader, really, their results come from their ability to motivate and empower others to contribute. Leaders must have the ability to foster relationships between their employees and among clients. Good relations inspire a team to be more productive. Employers often go the extra mile in organizations when they feel appreciated. And clients are loyal to companies and organizations that they have built a relationship with and where they feel valued. So we've discussed the why, we've discussed what some of those skills are, the definitions associated with competencies, skills, and knowledge. But how do we develop these skills? I think we must move beyond remembering and understanding and provide students with opportunities to apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. And then we need to develop methods that develop leadership, including things like apprenticeship, clinical experiences, volunteering, service learning, experiential learning opportunities, if you will. And a lot of these methods are being used today, and we can apply them. But one of the opportunities that I think is the greatest and is my favorite is mentoring and coaching.
Several years ago, I was at a conference in it was in Czechoslovakia, and it was the Association of MBAs. And one of the speakers there that day was from the Wharton School of Business. And he got up and was telling the faculty members and those attending that the future of education, particularly for business, but I think this is also for your healthcare administration, is that we're almost moving back to an apprenticeship model of educating. And that's kind of another way to talk about developing others through coaching and mentoring. It's being able to be with people through the whole journey. A lot of the things that we will talk about is how do we implement one of these processes. And be quite honest with you, it does take a lot of time. This is not a times quickly done process. It's done over a period of time on an individual basis sometimes. But one of the things that's really important when you get into this apprenticeship model, mentoring or coaching model, you need to be able to regularly communicate and give feedback to the student or the whoever you're mentoring. This needs to be intentional. It's not something that you can catch them walking down the hall. We don't do that anymore. Catch them in a Zoom meeting, but it has to be intentional. You set up a time. It doesn't have to be a long. It could be 15, 20 minutes just to kind of catch up on where they are, how they're doing, give them some feedback, because all these students want to know how they're doing. And you remember when you were a student, you always wanted to know if you're doing really well, and you needed that outside feedback. And having a faculty mentor or an administrative mentor or a supervisor who can mentor them through the process is critical. And you got to remember that this process is integrated into an academic calendar. So maybe once or twice a semester, if you're doing this in an academic setting, is appropriate. If you're in a supervisory setting or a setting where they're doing uh, uh, internships, it would definitely be more often. And one of the things that really helps this process is creating a culture of feedback. So it's not just you and that your advisee or you and your mentee. Um, Developing a place where they can have peers that'll facilitate back, whether that's in the internship spot or in the classroom when around presentations. But a culture of a 360 is very important, so that these folks who are moving into leadership positions will understand that they are part of a larger community, and it's not necessarily hierarchical. There's always going to be people around you, and you need to be able to understand where you fit into those cultures. Uh, and it's really hard sometimes, especially as younger learners. I mean, most undergraduate level, particularly, giving feedback to each other, they just want to make them feel good. And if I tell them that they're real good, they'll tell me that I'm really good. So having this open dialogue is critically important. And the second thing is going through this process is you have to be able to set realistic goals and expectations in these. Each student or each learner will be at a different place in their life. Some folks will have been running leadership positions and running organizations in their high school time or in their early college time. But there's others who have never done it before. But you've noticed that this person has the ability to fill in and be a very functioning and a contributing leader. So it's a balance between pushing people too much and not enough, keeping the students from being bored. We all know that that's always a challenge, whether it's in leadership or other things. And then one of the things that it's sometimes frustrating, and my wife is as an academic, and she has one of those gifts that she's always available for questions. Students will call her any time of day or night. I'm not saying that's healthy, but what I'm saying is being available is an important part of this learner mentoring model. And in the end, like with most things in life, the most important part of this process is to listen. You have to listen to the students, to their successes, to their struggles, to their feelings of maybe incompetence or their strength. But it's so important that we, as people who mentor and facilitate, that we listen first before we speak. And it's really important, because if students or learners don't think they're being heard, they become bored and they become disenchanted with the process and do not fulfill their abilities. Listening is that piece of respect, and students and learners understand that respect is so important. And it's more likely that to be able to push the student further along the path if we listened and garnered their ability to respect us and we respect them. And then in the end, it's the cross-pollination. We are all learners in one form or another. We may be in different places in our careers and our lives, but each student comes from a different background, and each student we can learn from. I hate to quote my mother, but I will do that. My mom always said that she learned so much more when she was teaching than she believed that anybody ever got from her. So I think that's one of the things that is a way to keep our own careers invigorated and moving forward, is we constantly open to the new, and listening to the students to make those connections with our peers and our students and all of our community, which is part of this 360. And then one of the other things is in this listening is you ask opinions. How do you think you're doing? What are the where are you? What are you frustrated with? What are you sad about? Because as we know in healthcare, we run into situations that are not always the most cheerful. And then the possibility of just simply asking for feedback. How can I help you better? How can we work together better to get this accomplished? Remembering that the workplace, and I think particularly in healthcare, it's a democracy more than a dictatorship. And in the end, what we're looking to is to build confidence. Confidence that these identified young leaders can move forward, and that they can achieve their goals, and that they can make a difference in the world around them. And helping them understand where they are and how they can move forward, we can help build confidence so that they will be confident to move ahead and become the leaders they can be. The last thing that I think we'll be talking about here, well, it's one of the last things, is addressing failure. As hopefully I've heard this from many people, but for myself, it's true. I have learned from those things that have gone wrong more than those things that have gone right. If I'm always successful and nothing ever pushes me or gives me pause to think, uh, it's important. And it's important that in our mentoring that we address those failures. Sometimes the students don't see those failures. Sometimes they need to be helped to see where they could have done better, or where it was their issue, not somebody else's. So we need to be able to do this in a way that they can be heard, and that the responses are heard and discussed through. It's not that we accept failure and move on, but we need to learn from our failures. And we don't want to see failures that crush people around us, the students or the other folks around. Instead, we want to know what went wrong and how we can make it better next time. And in the end, it's asking for help. We need to be able to function in a way where the students feel comfortable to ask us those questions, to ask us to help, to let the learners know that the questions and concerns are important, and that we can work through them together. And to become a leader, you have to be able to ask those questions. You're not always going to know the answers. Like we said earlier, of those 4 traits, we all have 4 of them, but some of them may be stronger than others. We need to be able to reach out and ask for help in those areas where we may not be so strong. And in the end, we should be able to be comfortable helping our students ask for help and to move forward into their lives. Desiree?
Thank you, Bill. One of the things you mentioned was the cross-pollination, and I just remember teaching, and I taught for a community college, and so we had students of all backgrounds. I had students who were just out of high school, ones that were a little bit older, going back to school, and that cross-pollination. Not only do we learn from our students and our students learn from us, but they learn so much from each other, and creating that culture, that educational environment is so important. So I'm glad you touched on that point. So I'm going to talk about flipping higher education. And what I mean by that is I get really excited when we talk about education innovation, and flipping the classroom has been around for a long time, but it's more difficult than we think. also, before I forget, you may have noticed that it seemed like Bill was giving you tips for becoming a great leader, a faculty member yourself, instead of actually developing that competency within students. And if that's what it sounded like to you, it's because effectively mentoring and coaching not only provides education to our learners, but it is a model that further reinforces the concepts we aim to teach, because we're modeling it, right? We're showing them by example. And so I just wanted to make sure I said that. But anyway, we understand that flipping education so that faculty can spend more time on activities such as mentoring and coaching is difficult. Also, identifying and measuring skills indicative of leadership development is difficult. At Peregrine Global Services, we operate on a foundation of developing and delivering real solutions to some of these challenges, and I plan to share just a bit about those with you today. So we have evaluate skills, and I'm just going to talk about this for just a moment, but evaluate skills was probably the service I was most excited about when I came aboard the Peregrine team back in March. It's an online 360-degree assessment service that directly measures proficiency levels for essential workplace competencies, including those competencies that are indicative of great leadership. With value skills, participants, or your students, gather feedback from their peers, superiors, subordinates, mentors, or even clients, depending on where they're at in their educational journey. The method for collecting feedback ensures that it's objective, right? So we use a 5-point Likert scale rubrics that focus on behavior rather than the person being evaluated. So Peregrine has been providing 360-degree evaluation assessments in our leadership division for many years. And one of the common criticisms of 360-degree evaluations is that they're subjective and not objective. And so with this focus on behavior rather than the person, it is the most objective 360-degree evaluation available. And institutions have a lot of flexibility. They can customize the assessments quite a bit. We do have pre-built assessments, such as we have an assessment that's built maybe just to ensure that you're measuring the skills and competencies that are more soft, identified by AUPHA. And then you can also customize your own. We have over about 250 different soft skills and accompanying rubrics for schools to use. And so that is a great tool for understanding where your students are and where they need to go, and addressing whether you were able to help them develop those soft skills or competencies throughout your program. And then, of course, participating in continuous program development and improvement, because that is important. And then the next thing I want to talk to you about is leading edge learning competency-based modules. And so leading edge learning is competency-based modules are modules, educational information that can help you enhance your courses. And we developed these online modules so that they can be mixed and matched to support the development of 8 key workplace competencies. These 8 workplace competencies were identified by the National Association of Colleges and Employers as some of the 8 competencies most needed by employers in all industries. And you can see a list of those here. We have critical thinking and problem solving, oral written communication, teamwork, collaboration, digital technology, leadership, professionalism and work ethic, career management, and then global intercultural fluency. And so we've developed these modules to support competencies. They are cross-disciplinary. And so perhaps you teach a traditional face-to-face course and need to transition online or hybrid delivery, or maybe you have an online course and would like to add new content in certain areas. And so the modular nature of leading edge learning gives faculty options for easily adding online content. One of the possibilities these modules provide is to flip the classroom and give your students interactive material to learn the concepts on their own time and spend class time exploring application, working together, doing some mentoring and coaching. We do have a more in-depth webinar covering the variety of leading edge learning modules. So we're not going to cover everything about what is available today, but I just want to let you know that we do have a webinar next week. I'll give you more information in just a moment, so don't leave before you get that. But I want to give you just a little bit more information. So the options for leading edge learning include comprehensive individual simulations. We have case studies, a variety of case studies, and then we have foundational learning modules. So that cover a variety of fields. All of the modules comprise of informative text, video, sound clips, activities, and quizzes. They're very engaging, very dynamic, which just reinforces learning, much more dynamic and engaging than a textbook, which is what I really like about them. And the learning is active, right? And they promote student engagement by having students participate in their own learning. And there's activities throughout each module. Like I said, the videos, they also have activities such as answering questions, matching concepts, flip cards. It's really quite neat. And then back to leadership. So I said we have all these modules and they're amazing. And so these are just some of the modules that we have, and you can see that they're broken out by the number of learner hours. So that's the amount of time it would take a student to go through that, doing all the activities and maybe taking some notes and reading all of the material. And so we see here business ethics, business leadership, delegation, employee performance management, entrepreneurship, leadership communications, leadership decision-making, leadership essentials, foundations. The list goes on. You can see them all here. We have even leading organizations, which is 4 different modules, 3 to 5 hours each, leading leaders, managing conflict, mentoring, supervision, so on and so forth. And so if you would like more information about those modules, reach out to us. I'll give you our contact information, also direct you to our webinar next week, where we'll be taking a deep dive into these leadership modules. And then also I want to mention that we do provide many solutions that promote student success in school and the workplace. Those include assessment solutions, particularly for those of you here today, you may be interested in value skills or healthcare administration assessments. And then we have a variety of instructional solutions and then accreditation solutions. So I said I'd give you more information about this webinar next week, our deep dive. So it is next week. It's exactly 1 week from here now at the same time. You can go to www.peregrineglobal.com/webinars. It is called Leadership Matters, just like this one. It's just the second version of it, and it's really just talking about those leadership modules that we provide. And so if you'd like to learn more about those, let us know. Also, if for some reason you can't make next week's webinar and you would like to talk to us about maybe some challenges you're having, and if we potentially have a solution for you, all of our solutions are customizable. We do provide a very consultative approach to creating solutions, and sometimes the solution may not even be our services. Please reach out to us. We value our position as your thought partner and want to do that for you. I'm going to come back to questions. I just want to show you our contact information. So go ahead and go to our contact information, Bill. Yes, so you can see it here. Also, we will email you after the webinar, so you will have our contact information that way. But yes, please reach out to us. We're here for you. And back to questions. Do we have any questions?
I just want a little follow-up with what Desiree said. It sounded like I was really telling you how you should be when you're with your students about leadership. But I really, more and more I have thought about it over the last few years, that apprenticeship model is really the model, the best way to show people how to lead. So you find people who you can demonstrate how you do it with the techniques that we talked about, that the students will pick those up and learn them themselves from you.
Yes, thank you, Bill, for following up with that. Yes, modeling behavior, it's a great way to learn. I've had a couple people ask if we could send this presentation to those enrolled, and yes, we will. It'll just take me a little bit of time to get it uploaded, but once we do, we'll send you a link to that presentation so you can rewatch this or share it with your teams. Yeah, do we have any other questions? Cassie, I'm looking to see if we have any others.
No, Desiree, I believe you covered them all so far.
Perfect. All right. And I saw a couple come through the chat box and I was responding to them as I, you know, as much as, and Cassie was responding to them, but yeah, what a great time we just had. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you and we appreciate your time and we hope to see you next week. Yeah, have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good rest of the semester.
I'm going to end this. I just have to, I think you have to, Bill, because you're the presenter.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how. So.